Yeah, hi, I'm Roy from New York. I'm one of those backyard woodworkers. Literally, all my woodwork is done outdoors in the backyard. As you can see, I have quite a collection of milled lumber behind me. It's mostly white and red oak, cut into 2-inch slabs. The purpose of this video is to show how I turn this rough cut lumber into boards I can use for furniture. In this case, I'm looking to make some legs for tables. Kind of like these right here. In fact, exactly like this. It's hard to believe that those boards will turn out looking like this. It involves the picking out of the best boards for the job and then drying, cutting, planing, and sanding them. Part of the challenge has been adapting to the tools that I have. I'm sure you'll think of better ways to get the job done, but this is what works for me. So, let's get going. Okay, we got to pick out some boards for my table legs. I milled these boards anywhere from a year to 2 years ago, and they've been sitting out here drying ever since. I focused in on this particular tree. It seemed to have some good quality boards, fairly knot-free. Let's take the top off, take a look at it. As you can see, there aren't too many knots in it, and I've removed some of the boards already and placed them in my shed to dry. So let's take a look at what's in here. As you'll see, there are some boards stacked on the floor, and the ones I brought in from that tree are standing in front of us for inspection. Okay, one of the things I want to do is check the moisture content of the boards. I'm using a moisture meter. As you can see, the first board is 17% moisture. Second board is 18%. Now this other board I have here in the corner is a piece of cedar that was given to me, and it's been milled for at least 40 or 50 years and drying. You can see that's only 4%. This board has been in the shed for a year, and you can see that the moisture content's down to 11%. This other board, it's some red cedar. I just milled that about a month ago, and it's been in the shed for maybe 3 weeks. You're going to see the moisture content on this is about 20%. So I picked the boards with the 17 to 18% moisture content. I found that once I plane and sand the wood, it opens up the surface pores and it dries faster, especially when it's brought indoors. I'm expecting 11 to 12% moisture content when all is said and done. So I laid the board out on the table so I can inspect the board a little bit closer and make some decisions on how I'm going to cut the board and utilize it in the best way possible. I'm checking for knots. I don't want any knots to go all the way through the boards. Also, I'm looking to see the board is fairly level, not warped. I see this crack in the middle of the board, which will determine to a certain extent how I can use it. There's also a knot there, another knot there. Okay, so now I've got to see how I can get some table legs out of this. Well, table legs are about 2.5 inches wide. So by taking some measurements, I can decide how many legs I can get out of this board. I have some prototypes here. I'll just put those on. There's 2 legs there. 2 legs there. Good. Now, the proper length of the boards, that's what I need. That's about 18 inches. So that would be one cut. I'll cut this board into sections. There's another cut. Take that knot out. And another cut. And that one's a little bit short.
but I can use a shorter piece of wood. Good. All right. Next step is to cut it up. Okay, I've already cut the crack end off, and I'm ready to cut some additional pieces to length. I have to work around a couple of these knots, and this is probably the area that I'll be cutting the legs out of. I'll be using my circular saw, which has plenty of power to cut through the 2-inch oak. It's got an 8¼ inch blade with 15 amps. The typical homeowner's saw is 7¼ inches and about 12 amps. So this has a little more power. Okay, I cut the board into 18-inch sections. This is a remnant from one end of the board. And what I have to do now is get a flat, straight edge to work off of when I cut the legs. I can't have a rough edge when I'm running it through the table saw. So, this gives you an idea of what I want the legs to look like. That's the sections I want to cut out. But I have to start with one straight edge. So I'll take my level as a straight edge and kind of estimate a nice cut on that. So I run with the grain and get rid of the live edge, they call it. Good. That's the cut I'm going to make. I'll be using my circular saw to make the cut. Okay, I freelanced a little bit with the cut, and as you can see, it didn't quite come out perfectly straight. There's a bit of a gap there. So this gives me an opportunity to show you how I correct this. Sometimes it comes out perfectly straight, sometimes not. I wasn't overly careful with this. Okay, this is my homemade jointer, which is rigged up on my table saw. I got the idea from the internet. I could afford to buy one, but I really don't have the room for another machine right now. And you know what? It actually works. So here's that edge that's not quite flat. The idea here is to run it through this jointer and make the edge flat. Now, if you remember, there was a gap there. The edge wasn't flat. Now it's perfectly level and flat. Exactly what I want. And ready to make legs. Okay, now before I cut the legs, I have to remove the jointer and restore the table to its intended purpose. I thought you'd be interested in how this comes apart. Give you a better understanding of what the jointer actually looks like. It's easy to assemble and disassemble. That's all there is to it. I'll be cutting a 2½ inch piece off for the leg, which will be easier now that I have a flat edge to work off of. will be the second leg off the same piece of wood. Next, onto the planer. I'm planing the surfaces that were created by the chainsaw, not the table saw size. This planer handles boards up to 12 inches wide, so these are only 2.5 inches, no problem. Okay, they look good, they match up nicely. Time to sand them. Okay, before sanding, this is another option to using the 12-inch planer. On the left is a board that was already run through the 12-inch planer, and the board on the right still needs to be planed. This is a 3.5-inch electric hand planer, and it does a good job, but it doesn't give me as much control over the thickness of the wood as the 12-inch planer does. Okay, it looks as good as the one that came through the 12-inch planer. And next thing we have to do now is do some rough sanding. Okay, next step here is to give them a good sanding. You see along this side there's some marks from the table saw blade. I'm using a 50 to 80 grit sandpaper on the belt sander for the rough work. I'll follow up with 120 grit once the legs have a chance to dry out more. Okay, looks good. Now we'll just square up the ends. Next I'm going to use my chop saw to cut off one end of the table leg. This helps assure a square and tight joint when I build the tables. I'm taking off the least amount I have to. There you go. It's also an opportunity to remove cracked or knotted ends. I'll cut the other end when I assemble the table and know the exact length I need. Okay, let's do a quick moisture check of the finished legs. Okay, it comes in about 14%. That started off around 17%, if you remember. And I'm going to compare that to a table I made several months ago and see what the moisture is on that. That's down to 12%. That's the level I expect this wood to drop to shortly. Okay, these are the completed legs. I'll give them a chance to dry more before I use them. And this is the table I completed about a month ago with the same type of legs. The legs are oak, but I'm not sure about the top. It's a straight piece I picked up. The legs are coated with a polyurethane water base. Okay, here's another table using the oak legs with polyurethane. It has an oak top. It also has a epoxy coating on top as opposed to the polyurethane. And it's got probably 4 or 5 coats of epoxy. Very impressive. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed doing some backyard woodworking. This is Roy from New York saying thanks for watching and take care.